Hey, welcome live. And we have a special guest tonight, Jeff Nadu. And Jeff, and you guys know who guys know who Cane Shades is. But Jeff, why don't you tell us something about you so people get to and your the site that you have.
Yeah, so I want to thank you, Lee, for having me on. You two Cane Shades. I've been getting a kick out of some of your videos that you guys have been putting out. Just I don't know, it makes me laugh for some reason. But yeah, Lee and I got in contact. I do a show about the Mafia. It's more of a history aspect show. We talk about really just everything Mafia. If there's news, we'll bring that up. But we try to offer every week a compelling biography of somebody from the world of the mob, whether it was new or old. And we don't just sit there and read. We have a good time with it. We try to tell stories and tell you something you didn't know about Paul Castellano or John Gotti or Anthony Casso. And we have fun with kind of involving people that occasionally shouldn't be involved in the mob, but we involve them anyway. And we have a good time with it. It's a show that's really caught on and people are liking it.
And Jeff, one of the agreements that he made when he came here is like he knows that we talk a lot about John A. Light and stuff. And he didn't really want to get into that. And I respect that. So I'm going to ask him one question on John A. Light.
Yeah.
And you said something to me, and you said that John A. Light is, some of the things about him is true. So he's not a total phony.
No.
And I said to you that being that the guy's had some type of past, why do you think he's just embellish it continuously to make himself look worse?
Yeah, well, and again, I think, whenever you talk about history, you've got to be factual and tell the truth about history. And look, did people like John A. Light and Gene Borello and Jimmy Calandra, all those guys, I mean, they all had a place in the history of the mob. Were they high-level people? No, they weren't. And John is a guy that I think realizes that stories sell. And look, I think in certain ways he's smart when realizing that. But I do think he talks himself up a little bit higher than he is. Again, I don't know. I'm not in the Mafia. I wasn't there. Things that John say is true. Do I think he knew Carla Gambino? No, I don't. There are things that he says that I don't think are factual. And I think, Lee, to answer your question, I don't know if there's anyone that's legitimately going to call him out for it. So I think we've all told stories before, but that's kind of the avenue John wants to go with it. And I've kind of said to you, I think in our shows so far, John isn't consequential to what we're talking about, so we don't talk about him. But I told you, someone like Jimmy. Look, I told you before, Jimmy Calandra was a tough dude. Okay, he ran with tough people. He did some bad things, and he knows that. And I think, even Gene, I know we get a kick out of Gene's antics, but, Gene was a guy that did some tough things. Gene ran with some tough people. Ronnie Gialonzo is a tough motherfucker. Ronnie Gialonzo is doing 14 years. I mean, he wasn't some nobody, but I think for a lot of these guys, they have the ability now to tell stories. Not a lot of people are going to call them out for it. And, they're protected at the end of the day. So, I think going after them is fun and all, but you're not going to really, I think, get much of a rise out of them, and they're not going to come back at you because they don't want to get into you look at Gene. He's a prime example. He doesn't want to get go back to jail, which he did recently.
And talking about the Bath Avenue crew, I've studied them. I knew nothing about them when I got into this genre. I had no idea who they were. Yeah. They were a pretty rough group.
Oh yeah.
They
really were.
From A to Z. I mean, every damn one of them.
Yeah, real quick, they were a farm team for the Bonanno crime family. Anthony Spiro gave them, tasks, and they completed them. They sold a lot of drugs. They robbed a lot of banks. They were robbing houses. They killed people. I mean, Tommy Reynolds, one of the ringleaders of that group, he's doing 50 years. Fabrizio Di Francisi, he's doing 50 years. So these were tough dudes, man. I mean, Jimmy and that group were tough kids, and ultimately, Jimmy put himself into a different situation than those guys. But yeah, they were definitely a formidable group in the 90s. Sure.
Jimmy and I, we've had a couple issues, but the reality is Jimmy is not a phony. He is who he says he is. He is a tough guy, and you got to respect that. And that's how I look at a guy like Jimmy. And as for that whole crew in general, I would say, would you say that was one of the tougher crews out of all these recruitment centers that they had?
Yeah, I think you can make the case. I mean, obviously, I know you've in the past. I think you and Kane Shades mentioned the Tanglewood boys.
Right.
There's been some tougher farm teams. Even and I know we don't like to talk about him, but John Alite was a farm team guy. I mean, John Alite was part of Junior's crew at one point, and they were a bit of a farm team, if you will. Now, obviously, they had a bit of an ascension, particularly Gotti Jr. because of his father. But yeah, I would definitely put the Bath Avenue crew up there as far as kind of the farm team group. They were the Bonanno crime family used them for a lot of pieces of work, and ultimately, you look at how that all ended for them, and that was Paulie Galino pushing Spiro, which, as you guys know, you can't do. And I know you made a very interesting point in your show yesterday, which I watched. You made a really eloquent point. You discussed about how, if you go into that life and you want to be a part of that life and you want to take the money and you want to take everything involved with being in that life, if someone tells you to do something, you don't say, no, I'm not going to do it. And if Jimmy were out on the street, he was in jail at that point. But if Spiro went to Jimmy and says, listen, Paul's got to go, Jimmy would have had to do it. It's just that simple.
And these guys, that's their dream. They wanted to get into, they wanted to become a made man. They wanted to become part of. So that's what I really deeply feel, that it's unfortunate, but it's always your friends that come to get you.
Yeah, no, you're never, as all the movies have told you, all the, even people that are really in the life, you're not going to hear about it. They're just going to do it. No one's going to say, hey, I'm coming for you. No one does that. They're just going to put a bullet in your head. So
Kane Shade, do you have something you want to ask him before we move on?
I have a few questions. First, how did you get into this whole mob genre, the podcast? What made
man, that's a question that people ask me. Honestly, I've always had an interest in it. I enjoy history. I enjoy reading. I remember when I was a kid, I was watching Sopranos when I was 10, 11 years old. I'm from the Philly area. I've always kind of enjoyed, not necessarily true crime. It was always more of an organized crime thing. And I've done a lot of reading and I have a good mind as far as retaining knowledge. And I just thought, what? I've done the sports betting thing. That's kind of my day thing. And I had some free time right, at the beginning of the year. And I said, what? I'm just going to do this. We put an episode out. I have a producer and I said, can we get this on iTunes? Mm-hmm. We put the show out. I did the Chin Giganti show, which is the first show. Mm-hmm. We have 25,000 listens on that show, and we're just putting out episodes every week. And again, as Lee said, I don't get into the mud really. We just kind of put episodes out. We talk about the news and talk about someone. And I kind of just did it, Kane Shades. It's no more different than that. Just like Lee did his channel, you did yours. Yeah. I just kind of did it. And I have some decent backing behind me. I've worked at some pretty major companies and that sort of thing. So I have a decent following, but I kind of just did it, to answer your question.
And the information you get is just based on books and just research.
Yeah, so I read a lot of books. Most of the research that I do and get is directly from indictments and straight from PACER, which is the government. It's the archive of case information. So, for instance, on our show, we also talk about drug dealers, drug traffickers, major drug gangs. We did a show recently on a Philadelphia drug trafficker, Kabani Savage, and most of that show is taken strictly from the trial. Reading indictments, reading 302s, reading trial information is important because that's straight from the horse's mouth. That's straight from the government. It's come out in court. But yeah, a lot of books. I'm a big book guy. I have a ton of books, and just kind of going places and finding facts in archives and things of that nature.
Now, Kane Shade. Why? Who is the lady that you were talking about down in the Florida?
Yeah, Griselda Blanco. Have you read anything on that?
Yeah, so Griselda, I know you're Miami, right? You live down there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's funny because we actually talked about this on the show coming out tomorrow. We do a little Q&A thing, and someone asked me about, are there any female mobsters, right, in America? And there are none. In Italy there are some, but I brought up Griselda Blanco, and I don't think people quite understand how big Griselda Blanco was. Obviously, we hear about Pablo Escobar, Chapo Guzman, and all these other guys. But I mean, from a standpoint of America, I don't know if you can get a more lethal drug dealer than Griselda Blanco. She was a dangerous, rich, powerful individual. She's not someone that I've read extensively into. And I'll be honest, I know you're a big fan of hers, not a fan, but you know
I'm not
a lot.
A fan. No.
No, I guess more of a researcher. So, I guess, and I would do my research, but I think you would be a really good researcher to talk to about that. I think you know a ton about Griselda Blanco. But
her son doesn't live too far from me. He's on that VH1 show. He doesn't live. He lives maybe 17 miles out. So.
But Cocaine Cowboys is terrific. I mean, that's a really, really good. Some really good content on her, and she was a lethal, deranged individual.
I was under the assumption, Kane Shade, that you had posters of her in your bedroom wall and stuff.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I tell you what, that's a mean old lady. They're saying over 200 murders that she's involved in. She killed killed two of her husbands. Some mean, nasty lady.
Yeah, and I think this one of your commenters makes a good point about, she just kind of had an advantage. I think maybe a lot of people took her kind of soft because she was a woman, or, look, I've said this before. It was much easier to do crime, as you know, Lee, and you guys are older than I am. It was a lot easier to do crime back then, selling drugs and committing murders and things of that nature. But yeah, she was a lethal woman, probably the most lethal woman really in the history of the country from a drug trafficking standpoint.
And I want to ask you another question that I find quite fascinating. We were talking about this before. Joe Pistone.
Yeah.
Do you think that they covered up on how many laws that guy's actually broke to get that close? Well,
listen, he's not Lynn DeVecchio, and if you know anything about Lynn DeVecchio was very crooked. He was involved with Gregory Scarpa, if you know anything about him. No, listen, I think Pistone did some things that he shouldn't do. Did he go to the level of what DeVecchio did? I don't think. But yeah, I think he definitely committed and broke some laws. And I think if you don't believe that, I think you're nuts. The people that he ran around with, Sonny Black Napolitano, Lefty Guns Ruggiero, I've said before, is one of the most Cosa Nostra people you'll ever come across in the mob. He was Cosa Nostra to the end. And he has a fascinating story as to how he got out of all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, you look at why ultimately Joe Pistone had to leave that operation is they asked him to kill someone. Bruno and Delicato had to go, and they wanted Joe Pistone to carry out that hit. Now, obviously he didn't do it, but yeah, I think he went right up to the levels of, almost committing murder. And he ended up not doing that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things he did that never came out. And the FBI, as we know, is willing to look the other way on things because they wanted, people in the Bonanno crime family. It was that simple.
Now, you did a show on John Gotti.
Yeah.
And when you read up on John Gotti and stuff, what is your opinion of John Gotti as a leader to that family?
Listen, I think when it comes to fame and the normal person knowing about the mob, there's no one bigger than John Gotti. It's that simple. But when it comes down to effective leader, moneymaker, kind of his overall legacy, it was a short one. I mean, he wasn't a boss very long.
Right.
I think he was a guy that obviously was flamboyant. He was willing to take what he wanted, but he attracted a lot of attention, as we know. I don't always want to live, though, by the whole thing. Well, he put himself on tape. And look, a lot of gangsters put themselves on tape.
Yes.
Tony Corralo put himself on tape. Tony Salerno was on tape. Chin Gigante was on tape. A lot of people were on tape. But, I think Gotti ultimately was a guy that was Cosa Nostra to the core. Anybody that knew him knew that. Did he make a lot of money? Yes. Was he the type of leader, though? He did things that were very out of pocket, like making all the captains go into New York, into the Ravenite. Wasn't a great idea. There was literally cameras that sat outside of there 24 hours a day. He almost asked for it. And look, ultimately he had to deal with some people that, like Sammy, who, ultimately ratted him out. That was the reason John Gotti went away. Sammy Gravano ratted him out. It's not because he was on tape. Every mobster, as I said, is on tape. But Sammy Gravano turned state's evidence against him.
Now, if Sammy Gravano doesn't turn state evidence during that trial, do you think they still get him?
Well, look, I mean, he beat the government, 3 times?
Yes.
He beat the rap. I think it's hard to say. I think ultimately they always get you.
Yes.
Would they have gotten him in that case? No, because I don't think there was much, there was no, outside of the stuff that they had with Sammy, tapes are tapes, as they say at the end of the day. Now you can't cross-examine a tape and what John said, he said, but John had a powerful lawyer. Look, ultimately you have to remember as well, Bruce Cutler was not allowed to represent John Gotti at that trial, which was a pretty big thing as well. They basically, got rid of Cutler and says you have to hire a brand new lawyer, and that hurt John as well. Ultimately, John was going to get caught up and go away, but I think John knew it was either die or go to jail. It's that simple. He was never going to take a plea. He was never going to do anything. Would he have gotten caught at that point? No, but it was only a matter of time. The FBI put too much into it, and to this day, they hate the Gottis more than anyone. I don't think anyone will argue with that.
Yeah, we were talking about recently a nephew that went to jail, and they gave him twice the sentence that they would give a person on average. So if you have that name, the government's going to be after you forever.
Yeah, and you look at guys. I mean, for instance, like Tony Salerno. Tony Salerno was not even the boss of the Genovese crime family and got 100 years. They just didn't care. They brought everyone in, and that was that. They wanted the mob. They wanted to extinguish it in this country, and they haven't completely done that, but they did a pretty good job. And they were willing to go to allowing an individual that killed tens of people, probably 30, 40 people. They're willing to allow those people to walk the street with no type of restriction to get other people. And that's something that you gotta ask yourself, how is the government allowed and able to do that?
I think, and this is one of the reasons I started my show, I think it's criminal. I mean, they're dealing with people that are actually worse than the people they're putting away. And, Sammy Gravano is the perfect example of that. And then on top of that, he's coming out and making a massive amount of money. And you have these victims in the background that are like, where do you get, like, perfect example, Alan Kaiser, that family right there. And a lot of times people will say, well, the people that he killed, they most of them were mobsters and stuff, but people don't realize some of them were not mobsters.
Yeah, and that's and Sam obviously has stories, and he's very interesting. And was he a heavy hitter? Of course he was. I mean, he was one of the most important people in the American mob in the 80s. It's that simple. But his explanation about Kaiser is meaningless. It doesn't matter if Alan Kaiser was a heroin addict. It doesn't matter. That is not a death sentence to anyone. You killed a kid that was not connected to them. And listen, that whole notion that the mob doesn't kill innocent people is not true. Right. Anthony Casso killed people that weren't connected to the mob. A lot of people, there was a lot of connection there. But, Sam is a guy that is going to try to make excuses for his behavior. I don't know why it wasn't called out when it happened. But it's pathetic. It's sickening. And, I credit to some of you folks who have these channels that, put the heat on him about that, because that is one thing he should answer. Why did that happen? Why did he never talk about it until he was pressed to talk about it? But yeah, I mean, he'll make a lot of money on YouTube because he has something that, a lot of people don't have. He lived this life. He knows it, and he can tell intimate stories that I can't.
Yeah. And the thing is, people have to understand that when I do these shows, when these shows are over, I don't get attacked in a chat room, but I get hundreds of some of the worst things that you can say to another human being. And Kane Shade was all upset because a week ago he said, no one's bothering me. Now they don't leave you alone, do they?
Yeah. They're after me. Now, Jeff, I wanted to ask you,
I got to take off for 1 minute.
Okay.
If you can carry this show, I'll be right
back.
Louis
Melito, recently Gravano saying that he was the one that pulled the trigger. What do you know about Louis Melito? Because this is all according to Gravano. Did he had any involvement in that Alan Kaiser murder?
Listen, it's another deflection. At the end of the day, he was there. And listen, as I said, with someone like Jimmy was a bad dude. Okay, he did things that were bad, but Jimmy will never admit to the fact that he killed Judith Shemtov at her home as an innocent woman. He didn't pull the trigger, but he was there. It doesn't matter if Sammy pulled the trigger or not. I don't think he did. I don't think Laborio Melito killed Alan Kaiser. I don't know ultimately. Melito was a soldier. He was a guy that was putting in pieces of work. He was best friends with Sammy Gravano as far as I know. Do I think he killed Kaiser? No.
Well,
no,
the question is, was Louis Melito even there? Because this is all Louis Melito is a dead man. But I'm saying this is all what Sammy's saying.
No, I again, yeah. And look, to answer your question. No, I don't think he was there. I think Sam's trying to deflect and try to take some of the brunt and the blame off of himself. It ultimately, he should probably just admit it. I don't know why he doesn't admit it. It's not like he's going to go to prison for it. And I'm sure he talked about it with the federal government when he talked to them about it. But do I think Melito did it or was there? No, not in that case.
And if you look at his original confession, he says he did it, and people don't understand. When he gave his original confession, they know if they lie and they get caught in a lie, they lose their whole entire, everything that's been agreed upon, they would lose. So you can't lie.
And it's also one other thing, like to talk about Melito for a second. This was Sam Gravano's best friend. Okay. Sam says to this day he didn't kill Melito, even though he told the FBI he did. People knew that he did it. There's just certain people that he doesn't admit to doing things with. It's weird. I don't know why he tries to hide stuff. It's like the penis pump story he told about Paul Castellano.
Yeah.
Like that didn't happen.
I can't pitch. No real man is going to do, especially Mafia. First of all, Daryl Mitchell, thank you so much. A 1999 super sticker. That is really nice of you. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you. That whole thing. It's like these are macho guys. They're not going to go in a room and have somebody look at them when they're pumping up their penis with a pump. It just makes no sense.
I also found it really ridiculous that Paul would ever tell anyone that he did that, because I think that really hurt his bravado, and I think it, ultimately no one ever respected Paul Castellano, and I'm actually one that believes Paul was actually, for the most part, up until the last 3 years of his reign, I felt that he was a pretty effective mobster. He made a ton of money. He was connected with the right people. He was lethal when he had to be. But ultimately, he was a hypocritical guy. He allowed little things like diabetes and impotence to really bother him. He goes out and does stuff like that. He starts telling his individuals they can't sell drugs, yet he'll take profit from selling drugs. He was just a hypocrisy-filled guy, and that's ultimately why he was killed, and John took him out, according to what we know. So, yeah, that story that Sam tells, I don't believe.
Here's a good thing. Tony V says crime was easier before the smartphone and advanced technology. And
1,000%.
I mean, when you really think about it, and we were just talking about this the other day, when you commit a crime now, most people don't know this, but even if you go out in the woods, they got cameras on the trees now when you go hunting that you don't see. And they're everywhere.
Yeah, it's really hard to commit a crime nowadays. You have to be, you've got to be you got to cover every base, because now, like, you'll forget a little thing, like you texted the person an hour ago, and the cops will go look at the phone and say, "Oh, he was in the area. Look at the phone tower," or he texted this guy. It's so hard. It's hard to be a criminal nowadays. A lot better ways to make a living.
Yeah, yeah. Get involved in technology.
Exactly.
Scott says Gotti brought the mob down, no matter whatever else he did.
Yeah, he definitely didn't help. Didn't help. Do I think he was, I think a lot of people always say, well, he was too much out there. He had his expensive suits and all that stuff. Listen, there's a lot of people that did that kind of stuff, yes. Right? And John always say, well, I didn't put the cameras in my face. They did. But he ate that stuff up. He enjoyed, being on TV. He enjoyed the limelight, and he definitely damaged the mob for sure. I remember, I think it was Joe Messino who ended up being an informant years later. But I think Joe Messino made a comment about John once that he set the or Tasso, one of those two, that he said that he set the mob back decades. Mm-hmm. And was. But
here's one thing John Gotti could say that Joe Messino can't say. Mm-hmm. I didn't rat.
Sure. And listen, when it comes to respect, stand up, Cosa Nostra dudes, I don't think he could ever knock Gotti for that.
No.
I mean, Gotti was Cosa Nostra to the core.
And I think that guys like Joey Messino, he has a fascinating story, but the fact of the matter is, in the end, he flipped. And a lot of guys back in the day that were his age that got in trouble would just say, okay, I got to stay in jail the rest of my life. I messed up. They caught me.
Yeah. And listen, I think Lee, and this is something that I think I will be very factual and real about, because I think that's where I kind of go that others don't. One of your commenters makes a good point. Okay. If you're going to talk about the Kaiser murder, which was horrific, one of the worst murders of someone not involved with the Mafia in the history. I mean, we have to talk about John Favara as well.
Yes.
John Favara accidentally killed someone. He didn't mean to hit the kid. He was an innocent dude as well, wasn't he? Right? So I think we have to talk about both sides here. This happened a lot. Now, did John do that? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows.
Yep. Nobody knows. And that's what it comes down to. Nobody knows. I mean, the whole thing, I can't compare much to the Alan Kaiser murder. I just can't, because I read up on it and I read a lot of facts that people don't really have, including autopsy reports. And it was just such a blatant lie. And it was so brutal. He could have walked away and just left that kid alone. Yeah. And as you know, back then, those kids looked up. If Sammy Gravano is driving down the street and he says, hey, kid, come on over. It's like, oh, Sammy Gravano's calling me. Everybody knows who Sammy was. The kid probably looked up and said, Sammy's calling me. Walked right into him. And boom.
No, you're right. And it's a really sad. I mean, listen, there were a lot of really sad things that happened in the hands of the mob. Yes. I mean, I'm not even going to go into Anthony Casso. I mean, Anthony Casso was one of the most lethal people you'll ever. I mean, this is a guy that would kill women. He would kill judges. He would try to kill judges. I mean, these were brutal people. Some of these. Roy DeMeo. Roy DeMeo is one of the most violent people in it. Roy DeMeo probably killed 100, 200 people. I mean, these are bad people.
So what do you think about that story that Sammy tells when he was in a restaurant with Roy DeMeo, and Roy DeMeo was talking about getting up and killing the old people and stuff?
I've never heard that story. Would it surprise me that Roy would say something like that? When it comes to one thing that I think I can make the case about, and I got a little shit on my show about this, because to me, Roy DeMeo was a lethal, deranged killer.
Oh, well, just 1 second, please. I just want to say real quickly.
Yep.
Jeff did a show on Roy DeMeo. So when he's talking about Roy DeMeo right now, and I listened to it, was fantastic.
Thank you.
So you really know what you're talking about with Roy DeMeo.
Yeah, I think Roy's a guy that was very evil. Tommy Patera as well. A lot of those guys, very evil people. Do I think Roy would kill an innocent man? He actually did. He killed a vacuum salesman outside of his home because he thought he was a Cuban hitman.
Yes.
And that was an innocent individual. And that was Roy's end. He couldn't get past that. And from what his son says, and his son is a very believable guy. He wrote a really good book about his father. I always felt bad for his son, Albert. I think he took a lot of the brunt to what his father did. He talked about when Roy did that, he didn't come out of the house for days. I mean, he was sickened. Do I think he said that to Sammy? No, I don't. Why would he say that? Roy was not Roy did hits because he was a hitman. He didn't kill because it's almost like that idiotic thing that I hear that Richard Kuklinski was a mob hitman. He wasn't a fucking hitman. He was a serial killer.
Yes.
He liked to kill people for enjoyment. He never had any connection to the mob. He never did anything. Do I think Roy was that kind of person? No, I don't. Did he kill a lot of people? Yeah, because he was told to, and that was his job.
And and Klinsky put poison on hamburgers. I mean,
he's a serial killer.
Yeah, it's really scary about him. Let me ask you a question. Out of your shows so far, and these people that you've done your shows about, how many have you done? Like 14 so far?
Tomorrow will be 17.
17.
So 16.
If you had to go through those guys right there, which one do you find the most fascinating, that you like just turned stuff over, you never knew it before, and it was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, look, they're all fascinating people. I always found Greg Scarpa to be pretty fascinating. I mean, this is a guy that was an informant really before anyone was an informant. And he was an informant in like the 60s. This is a guy that went down and was a part of the civil rights movement, like not the protesting, but he went down and did some work for the federal government in Mississippi. This is a guy that allowed another person that worked for him to have sex with his wife because he was too busy and he respected Larry Mazza. This is a guy that ultimately passed away from AIDS because he didn't want to use certain people's blood when he needed a blood transfusion, gets AIDS, and dies ultimately. He was just a really interesting cat. Even when he was like 120 pounds, he was out killing people for his son. And I don't know. I always just found Greg Scarpa to be pretty interesting. Nicky Scarfo was a complete lunatic, one of the worst bosses in the history of the American mob. I think he did so much damage to this family here that I don't think it ever really recovered. But I think they're all interesting in a sort of way.
And you talk about informants. I mean, look at Whitey Bulger was pretty much along that same line. But Whitey Bulger used his to get his competition out of the way.
That's correct. Now, I will say, and I got some flack for this, but I think if you truly know things about Whitey Bulger, I've always wondered how truthful. Look, did he inform? Yes, he definitely did. I think a lot of it, though, was untrue. I don't know if you can call him an informant like Sammy Gravano was an informant. And if you truly know, Whitey Bulger did some things that I think John Connolly made up a lot of the time. John Connolly was the real criminal there. Whitey was a terrible individual for sure. But you're right. He did do things to get his competition out of the way, like the Angelos and other folks. But, Whitey's an interesting guy. He lived on the run for 16 years. And he was caught the most amazing way possible. No one would ever believe how he was caught. It's truly fascinating.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Jeff. Yeah. Here's something that people don't talk about: the Gotti trial. When the Gotti trial was going on, Thomas Uva and Rose Uva was robbing social clubs.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on that? Like how crazy that was, because that never happened in the history of the mob.
That's a story. That always was a fascinating story to me as well. So for anyone that doesn't know, Kane's talking about a couple that needed money. They started going out and robbing clubs, and they robbed Dominic Pizzonia's club a couple of times. They were robbing joints like crazy. I think they had a death wish. They had a suicide pact, I think, or something.
And all this was going on during the Gotti trial, correct?
It happened in the early 90s. I have to get the exact dates, but yeah, it was happening during the heyday of the mob. It was not like 5 years ago or something. It was during the heyday. Actually, one of the great mob movies not talked about is The Wannabe. It's a terrific movie. It's about that whole thing.
And Rob the Mob. There's two movies.
Yeah, both very good. Yeah, both very good. It's truly a wild story. And then they end up getting blown away on Christmas Eve. By two guys that you can look up if you want. But yeah, that was always a fascinating story to me. I don't know why they're not talked about more.
And also, you were talking about farms, clubs. What is your thought on Flat Top DeRosa? What was he part of the Lucchese? And then he shot Greg Scarpa's eye off.
Michael DeRosa. He's an interesting guy. So he worked for Froggy Galleone, Froggy Galleone's father was Ralph Galleone, who was in the bar with Gotti and Ruggiero when they knocked off McBratney. He was a drug addict, Ralph Galleone. He's a real fuckhead. But his son ends up going into the mob years later. And Michael DeRosa was a drug dealer, and he worked with Galleone. And DeRosa got in a beef with Greg Scarpa's son, Joey. And they were beefing over drugs. And, one night, DeRosa and one of his compatriots go over to, they get into a beef with Scarpa. And this is when Scarpa had AIDS. Like, he was truly, like, really frail and everything. And they went over there and got into a shootout. The guy that was with DeRosa, this guy, Ronald Moran, shot Scarpa right in his eye.
So it was Moran who did it.
Yeah, Ronald Moran. Ronald Moran was a known really good shot, big fat kid, Irish kid, really big fat kid. And he shot Gregory Scarpa. And I remember Linda Scarpa talked about it, his daughter, and she talked about how, like, she was so worried because Greg had AIDS and he's fucking bleeding everywhere. And he didn't want to go to the hospital. And before you know it, the parole people are calling, what the hell's going on over there? And yeah, it was a wild story. But DeRosa ends up cooperating as well. I know he's actually living a pretty good life from what I understand. He's got some businesses and things of that nature. But yeah, he was definitely a guy moving around. Brooklyn in the 80s and 90s was a crazy place for mobsters and then for these farm guys.
Are you surprised that DeRosa doesn't have a podcast? Because all these informants have.
No, I think Michael DeRosa is and Mike's. It's interesting because Lee and I talked about this. There's some guys that I think would do really well with shows. Like Michael DiLeonardo, Mikey Scars. He would have a good channel, I believe. I think he was a guy that had a lot of moxie. But no, I'm not surprised DeRosa is not doing it. I think he's a guy that is doing well in his career. He has a new name. He has a new life. He's married. There's a guy in Philadelphia, John Veazey. He was a hitman for John Stanfa back in the 90s. Talking about a lethal guy, probably the most lethal guy in this city at one point. He doesn't have a channel. He's a very successful car dealer in middle America somewhere, and he just lives his life. Is he a fucked up guy? Yeah, he is. But some of these guys just want to kind of be away from it. I think that's probably smart in their life. So now.
What do you think about these channels? What's your opinion of these guys making money on these channels and stuff with their stories? What is your honest opinion on that?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's vile personally. It's not something that I think I would do. I would probably kind of want to run away and just have a different life. But I think it's hard to let go. The problem with America currently is the generation that we are in now validate and almost respect these people. You look at a guy like Tekashi 6ix9ine, the rapper. Right. Mm-hmm. This is a guy that sells millions of records still. These young kids don't care that he informed on 50, 60, 70 people. They don't care anymore. There's no honor with these young kids. They don't care about ethics and honor and respect. They don't care about that stuff anymore. And I think in this genre, people are so interested in compelling content that these people know that they can make money off the stories. The problem is very few of them are actually compelling. And I think a lot of them will fizzle out, particularly, I think, like I said to you, I think the only guys that I think will do pretty well with this, obviously Sammy, because I think he just has a ton of stories and content. And I think Jimmy, if he put some time into it, I think Jimmy did a lot of things. I think Jimmy ran with a lot of bad people. And I think if he put some time into it, I think he could do some good things with it as well. But, a lot of these guys, they're just telling stories and no one's going to call them out for it. But one thing they can say is they were movers and shakers in the mob. You're starting to see now, though, guys, people that were not ever in the mob, ever. Like, they have no connection to the mob. They were never in the mob. And they can go on the internet now and tell stories and make up an Italian last name and people will believe them.
So let me ask you a question. Someone like me, I come on.
Well,
my show's getting busier every day.
But you don't tell stories like you were in the mob. These guys tell stories that they knew who John Gotti was, and they're not even. There's no recollection of them ever in the mob.
Jeff, what is your thoughts on the Mafia Made channel? Is that one of the guys that you're talking about? Like a guy just comes and talks some mob stuff?
There's a guy. His name is Anthony Caucci.
I think he's a guy. Is that the Mafia Made channel?
I'm not sure. I don't know what his channel is called.
Yeah.
I know. I consider myself someone that knows a good amount about the mob. I feel like I know a lot of people. I don't think I've ever heard of him. I've never heard of him ever. I think he's a guy that maybe has too much to drink at night and just.
Is that the guy holding the glass?
Yeah, I think
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, he says he's from Florida or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I've never heard of him. I don't know who he is. And I think that's one thing about like someone like Gene Borello. Like I said earlier, Gene definitely did things. Definitely. Was he a killer? No. I don't not from what I know. Did he just
so people know, Angel Gotti was supposed to come on the show tonight, but she has a very sick cat. And as we know, when our animals get sick, it's become a concern. So She's going to set something up with me again, but there's nothing I could do about it. I mean,
well, shout out to Angel. She's a great lady, and I know she's pretty integral in this new movie coming out. So shout out to that family. You know, they've had to deal with a lot of nonsense, man. You know, and I think, like I said, the sad thing about the internet is you can truly say whatever you want. There's very little oversight in policing what you say, and anyone can say anything, and it's sickening and pathetic, and it's just part of life now, I guess.
You know what's sickening and pathetic? There was a Instagram page that was put up, and they were and this is John A. Light and his buddies, and they were calling me a child molester, a rapist.
Yeah,
so I finally got it taken down, and I have people saying, "So what do you mean you're not a rat?" And I'm thinking to myself, dude, he was calling me a child molester and a rapist. You know, this is how demented and you know, the very same people that say, "Oh, you're a rat," these are the first people that would rat. They would like flip in a second. It's all talk, you know, and they have no idea.
Yeah, and that stuff, you know, I guess I'll never knock anyone's ability to make a buck. You know, you have stories, you want to go tell them, do your thing. I do sadly feel bad though for the victims of these people. So, like, you look at Sam Gravano, for instance. Is he sending any of that subscriber money to Mrs. Melito or Mrs. Kaiser or, you know, Mrs. Shabetta or whoever, you know? Like, is he even allowed to make money? Isn't there Son of Sam laws against that?
Well, it's obvious that he's using someone else's name. But here, you got to remember, too, with the Kaisers, what he did is he invited them to come on the show. And they said to him, "Are you kidding me? We wouldn't even want to be seen in the same area as you." And it was part of his make myself look better, you know? And so what happened was they totally refused. And after they refused, what did he do? He went on and made up this story about how Alan Kaiser died and who he was. I mean, that is the kind of person that Sammy Gravano is. And
Hey, Lee, can you remove the comment? You've had that comment there for a long time. I saw one in the comment.
I like it.
No, it says Gotti brought them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, Cane Shade, what else would you like to ask?
I'm pretty much covered. I mean, I asked him what else. We talked about the with Rose Uva, and I'm pretty much tapped out. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask some. We have quite a few. We have almost 300 people right now watching, and
I just tweeted it out.
We could do a Q&A.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't tweet it. I didn't tweet it out until now. I just tweeted it out, so maybe we'll get some more people in here.
Okay, and after the Castellano, this is from Jesse Gotti. After the Castellano hit, they were watching Gotti Senior no matter what. The icing was King Rat Sammy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's 100% true. And again, the lawyer stuff hurt John. Bruce Cutler was a bulldog, man. He was a great lawyer. You know, he wasn't Roy Cohen, but he was a pretty damn good lawyer. So,
yes.
Yeah, the commission stuff really hurt the mob. Rico killed the mob. You know, before Rico, you could get away with a lot of stuff. It was hard to bring a mob guy down. But yeah, a lot of that stuff.
This gentleman right here is Carlos Munez. To tell you something about him, he's been a regular in this show since we started, and he's done some heavy time in prison. And he talks about it, and his opinion of rats is not good. And he's done hard time, and he said that he could have got out on a lot of things if he was a rat. But he basically asks the question, the commission case was the start of the mafia's decline. This nonsense blaming John Gotti for bringing down the mob is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think to just single-handedly say John did it to himself is really not true. I think Carlos is right. There's a lot of things that hurt John Gotti. It wasn't just John. I'll tell you right now, I don't think John was a terrible boss. I put out a poll on Twitter about that. Who do you think's the worst boss? I got a lot of people that said Gotti. I wouldn't put Gotti above Nicky Scarfo or a lot of guys. There were a lot of bad bosses. John did his thing. He wasn't the boss for very long, but to be truthful, as I said, John did a lot of things a lot of people did. A lot of people were on wiretaps, you know. A lot of people dressed in nice suits. Anthony Castro had a $2 million home in Brooklyn that he made custom. You know, that's ostentatious too. So, you know, I don't buy that.
When do you think that the mob started losing control of the the casinos and stuff, because they had control up to say that the early 90s.
And are you talking about in Las Vegas or
both Las Vegas and Atlantic City?
Yeah. So, when it comes to control of the actual casinos in Atlantic City, I mean, Nicky Scarf had a lot of control in the construction aspect. There's stories for days about him and his dealings with Donald Trump and other people. Donald Trump actually bought some land off of off of Nicky Scarf. Philip Linetti has talked about that. As far as in Vegas, the skim was just something that the government kind of uncovered, and they kind of put a lot of people away from that. But people like Tony Accardo were integral in that. Tony Accardo is the greatest boss in the history of the mob, in my opinion. I've always said that, and I'll always say it.
That was your last show was on Tony Accardo.
It was,
wasn't it? Okay.
Tony Accardo can say something that no one can say. He never did one day in jail, not one. And this was one of the most powerful people in the history of the mob. Never did a day. One of the reasons that Chicago became what it was, because when Al Capone was in control of Chicago, it was not the mafia. It was a gang, basically. It was a glorified gang. Tony Accardo took it from Frank Nitti and from Paul Ricca and took it into the bigger ages, took him to Vegas, took him out there. As far as when that ended, kind of after, kind of in the early 90s per se, and then big companies just came in and bought everything, MGM and all these different places.
Okay, I'm not too sophisticated here, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to Jeff, explain to people if they really want to see get to your site, what they should do to get there.
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple. I don't have a website. I have a podcast. You can search it on YouTube or on Twitter, Google, wherever you get your podcast, iTunes. It's just called The Sit Down, a Mafia History podcast. And if you get in touch with me on Twitter, I can put my Twitter in the I can put my Twitter out there. I can get you the show as well. Just follow me on Twitter at The Sit Down 7.
So if you type into the Google search engine and put The Sit Down, you will pop up.
Yeah, if you just type in The Sit Down Mafia History Podcast, it'll come right up. You'll see it. I have a logo and I have, whether you like Google or Spotify or whatever, I'm on all those.
Okay,
I'm sorry, you're a gambler, isn't that right? You were a gambler?
That's correct. Yes, I've made my not huge fortune. I don't have a huge fortune, but I've made my way through the gambling ranks. Yes, on Twitter and YouTube, and I've worked for companies and did gambling content. So yeah, that's been my normal thing for a long time.
And what happened at Barstool?
Yeah, so I worked at Barstool. I still have a lot of good connections there. They've always been very good to me. Ultimately my contract was up, and summer was here, and funny enough, I had a beef with somebody there, and it got pretty bad, to be honest. And people that follow Barstool know about it. And I kind of just decided to kind of go another way with what I was doing. But it's funny because we're actually in talks, hopefully, to get the show over there. That would be my ultimate goal. So I think the show's growing. I'm starting to build a base. I have a listener base, and I just want people to check it out and continue to grow it.
And would you do you think that you're going to get your show over to Barstool, even what happened?
Well, that's a big thing. I think the thing ultimately that went on, I still have the people there that matters respect, and that's what matters to me. I have a good relationship with Dave Portnoy. We've always been good. He's always been cool to me. I've always been cool to him. We have respect for each other. He hired me. I remember the first time I met him. And yeah, I think the idea is fresh. It's something that's interesting. And, I've told you, I'll tell Cane Shades and I'll tell your audience. If Sammy Gravano called me right now and asked me for an interview, I would undoubtedly fly out there to interview him. I don't have a problem with talking to him. I want to talk to him. I want to ask him questions. I want him to answer questions for me. Because a lot of these people that interview Sam don't ask him the questions. They don't know much about it. I know about him. I want to ask him these things. I want to ask these guys why they did what they did. Why did you do what you did? Why didn't you take responsibility as a man for the things you did? That's what I want to ask them. So yeah, I want to turn this show into Joe Rogan, but for organized crime. That's my goal. That would be
that's a big goal, because Joe Rogan's the man.
I don't think I'll ever get to that level, but we'll try.
But now, do you think that okay, that Jimmy Clondra went to Sammy?
I do.
I see a lot of jealousy out of that whole thing, a lot of anger. Do you think that Sammy did that on purpose?
Well, I don't think they knew each other in in the streets. I mean, they never really crossed paths as far as I know. They may have. I don't know. I wasn't there. But do I think to anger others? I don't know. Maybe Jimmy reached out to him. I don't know. I think Jimmy, one thing I will respect about him per se was I do think he's willing to kind of be a go-getter with the channel that he has.
Yes.
I think he probably just reached out and said, hey, you've probably heard of me. I know who you are. Would you want to do something? And, I'm sure a lot of other people are pissed off that are in that space, like John A. I'm sure he's pissed off because
John A. Light's come out perfectly and said, John A. Light's actually said that he was upset at Sammy because Sammy gave Jimmy street cred. And I'm starting to think that maybe maybe John A. Light doesn't have half the street cred that Jimmy had. I
mean, no offense to John A. Light, but Jimmy didn't need Sammy to give him street cred. Jimmy had street cred. Listen, Jimmy is not full of shit. Someone just says that. That is untrue completely. Jimmy cooperated. No one will disagree with that. He'll tell you himself he did. Did he do bad things? Yeah, he did. He killed a woman. We all know that. But did he do things in the street? Of course he did. And the thinking that he didn't is ridiculous. The Bath Avenue crew was a gruesome bunch of people. They were bad people. So to say that he didn't do anything and needed street cred, that's not true. Jimmy is smart enough that he went to Sammy because Sammy's popular. Look, if I'm in the gambling business and I can go somewhere over another place and they're more popular, I'm going to go to the more popular place. It's pretty simple. I care about what I'm doing and I want to grow what I'm doing. And that's what Jimmy did. I don't have any faults for him for doing that.
If you had 2 words to describe Tommy Karate, what would the 2 words be?
Violent lunatic. But he is someone that when you really look at who Tommy, you talk about interesting people. I forgot about Tommy Karate. How can I not bring him up? Tommy Karate was a master in karate. He went to Japan for 2 years. He was a master. He fought with like warriors, Japanese warriors in dojos and stuff over there. He was really integrated in the karate thing. He came home and we all know what he ended up doing. But yeah, he was a real lunatic, one of the most dangerous people in the history of the mob. And he is like a man paying for his crimes. And I think he is at peace for what he's done. He knows what he's done, and he owned up to it. And he had a rat in his case as well. Frank Gangi ratted on him, and I think he did a bad job in that case. He should have never brought Frank Gangi around. Frank Gangi was not cut out to be in that life. Frank will tell you that himself. And Frank was ultimately the reason Tommy went away.
So,
Mob Squad. I just heard about your brother Lee Cole sending my condolences. Thank you.
Yeah, rest in peace.
That, and I do appreciate that.
But isn't that interesting with the Frank Gangi that they pull him over because of what happened? They pulled him over and he was willing to tell the cops anything.
Yeah, he got caught up
out of his mind.
He got caught up in a DUI, which is pretty. I mean, when it comes down to what he was doing, it was a pretty minor infraction, frankly.
Yeah.
And he kind of just was so guilty, and he just started flapping his gums. And he said himself, he never did anything to the level. He walks in one day and he sees a body hanging over a shower and blood is dripping out, and they're cutting hands and legs and the head off. And Frank Gangi was just in. I mean, he couldn't really do anything. And then the Phyllis Birdie stuff happened with Celeste, and that's when Tommy Patera really went to another level. When Celeste was killed, and ultimately she died because Phyllis Birdie was a terrible influence on her. When Tommy got to that point, I don't think there was any saving him.
One question I did ask Jimmy, I asked him about when Spiro got pushed and by Paulie G. He was really close, and that was Karate's man. He was pretty much training him, and he took him under his wing. Do you think there was an attempt to stop that hit?
No, I don't. I think, unfortunately, Paul Galino did something that you can't really take back. I mean, Spiro's not lying about it. They're not going to just say, oh, well, and let's be real. I mean, did the Bath Avenue crew make money? Yeah, but Like they weren't making like Michael Franzese money for the mob or Jimmy Fiala money for the mob or Jimmy Napoli money for the mob. The Bath Avenue crew did good, but they're not going to get out of things because of now. Has that happened in the mob? Sure. I mean, passes have happened. You know, for instance, I talked earlier about Lefty Gun Giorgio, who was involved with the Donnie Brasco situation, played by Al Pacino in Donnie Brasco. The mob wanted him dead for his behavior with Donnie Brasco. But when he was going in to see the mob basically to kill him, the FBI stopped him as he was walking in and did whatever they could to get him to flip. They threw everything at him. He would not budge. He said, I'm not flipping. I'm not saying anything. And the mob actually gave him a pass and said, you know what? You're a stand-up guy. You didn't bring him around directly, so we're not going to hold you accountable for this. So that does happen. But in the Bath Avenue crew case, Paul Galito wasn't getting out of that.
And another question, can you explain the situation with Birdie and why she was killed?
Yeah, so Phyllis Birdie was a known drug addict in the area, and she was friends with Celeste, who was Tommy Patera's girlfriend. And I think one thing about Celeste that it's important to understand, Tommy Karate was a pretty soulless individual. He didn't have a lot of compassion, I don't think, in his life. He was an evil guy, and that's not surprising. He was cold. But Celeste brought a side out to him that I don't think a lot of people ever saw. And he truly loved her, as far as from what I've read. And she started palling around Celeste, Phyllis Birdie did. And Tommy told her to stay the hell away. And she didn't stay away. Celeste ultimately overdoses on drugs, and Phyllis is there. She's told to leave by Frank Ganji. She does leave and eventually comes back. Tommy gets wind of it and kills her. Tommy knew that she was the reason Celeste died, and she had to go, according to him.
And that's one of the big myths. If you look at Scarpa, if you look at Bolger and stuff, they had no problem with killing women, brutally killing women.
Yeah, I mean, Whitey Bulger killed a woman. Anthony Casso attempted to kill women. I've said to you, and I'll kind of, I think this is always an interesting question. I don't think there's ever a reason you should inform on anybody. The reason people inform is they don't want to go to jail. It's that simple. There's no other reason. It's not because your friends did this or not. You inform because you don't want to go to jail. But there was one guy that I ultimately never looked down on for cooperating, and it involved Casso, a guy called Pete Chiodo, Fat Pete Chiodo. Do you know him? Do you guys know him? He was a big earner in the Lucchese crime family. He was good friends with Anthony Casso. He's a big high-end guy. Big guy, too. He's about 500 pounds. That's why they called him Fat Pete Chiodo. Fat Pete Chiodo get jammed up on something, took a plea bargain. He just took the plea bargain. He didn't go to the family, which is what you were supposed to do. He just took the plea. Casso got wind of this. He didn't cooperate, this guy. He just took a plea. He admitted his guilt and went to jail. Casso was so enraged by this, he attempted to kill Peter Chiodo. Shot him 21 times. He didn't die. 21 times he shot him. He didn't die. He then decides, I'm still not going to do what I have to do. I'm not going to cooperate. Anthony Casso goes after his sister, almost kills her, puts her in a wheelchair forever. At that point, Peter Chiodo, who was a dangerous guy, did bad things, he cooperated. He was shot 21 times. His sister was almost murdered. His brother-in-law was murdered. So when you look at people like him, Fat Peter Chiodo, I guess there's a reason to believe that you do what you have to do.
This gentleman says, Greg DePalma, no one talks about. Would you be able to give us a...
Yeah, so Greg DePalma was an earner. He was not a tough guy. He was an earner for the Gambino family. He's been around forever, Greg DePalma. He was around. He knew Frank Sinatra. He had a club, the Westchester Club up in Westchester, New York. It was a big mover and shaker in that community. He knew everybody. Very celebrity driven. He was an earner. Made a lot of money for the Gambino family. And I think Cane Shades has talked about it.
Yeah.
Jack Garcia, a.k.a. Jack Falcone. Yeah. He was a Cuban FBI agent that infiltrated Gregory DePalma's crew. And really had some incriminating evidence against Greg DePalma and ultimately took him down and some Albanians and Arnold Squitieri and a couple other guys. But Jack Garcia is a fascinating guy. I'm trying to get him on my show. He's a very interesting guy. Told some really good stories about Greg. But Greg was an earner. He was not a tough guy, but he made a lot of money for the Gambino family. Sure. He was from Westchester, Bronx, that area.
I just got another 1999 and I lost it. Sorry. These things are going so fast.
Yeah.
And
Let's see
I
if I
just
can
want
find it.
Yeah.
Really good. I want to say really good chat group. I mean, really kind of engaging. Yeah, you got a couple trolls in here, but ultimately some really good questions. People that obviously know a lot. So.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing people have to remember. We're not doing this based on Johnny A-Line, okay? But you have to talk about what is popular. If you have a show, you have to. It's just part of the game. I mean, but I realize that I'm not going to survive. I'm going to survive on guys like you. You come in here with very interesting stories, and this is our genre. We want to talk about these mobsters, and whether you think they're brutal killers or not, the whole thing, the way they set it up in his organization, how well set up it is. It may not be that way no more, but the Russians are like that now. The Chinese are like that now. So let me ask you a question. You're an Albanian, and
Yeah.
they are a pretty intelligent bunch and very powerful group that seems to get underestimated. Would you say that?
Yeah, I do. I think one thing about the Albanians that a lot of people kind of don't necessarily realize, they don't have a lot of structure to their organizations. But a guy like Alex Rudai, back in the 2000s, he was a guy that really almost created a sixth family type of organization. He was not scared of anyone. And when we talk about Greg De Palma, at the time in the Gambinos, Arnold Squitieri was in control of the Gambino crime family. And I know he had a lot of beef with the Albanians. There was a big story about a gas station years ago where the Albanians came to the gas station and said, look, we're going to blow this whole fucking gas station up. We don't care. And that's the thing about the Albanians. They'll kill anybody. They'll blow your house up.
Yeah.
They'll kill your mother, your dog, your goldfish. They don't care. And they're gruesome, brutal people. There's a lot of Albanians in New York now. And there's a lot of Albanians that people have never heard of that are doing things. So one of your commenters mentioned the Rudai group. They're getting out in 3-4 years, I think. But yeah, they're definitely gruesome people for sure.
And it's a small country, like someone just said, small country. So sometimes these small countries seem to really, it's pretty incredible when you think.
And the thing about Albanians, Montenegrins, Croatians, people from Kosovo, most of the people from those countries came out of war-torn situations. Okay, so they come to America. They're really tough and blue-collar already. And they were a lot like the Albanians or like the Italians in the 1920s. They are kind of stomped on and they take what they want.
Yeah. The Albanians are in the Pelham Parkway section of the Bronx was Plum Loco.
Yeah, the Pelham Park. Yeah, that's Mars Park, Pelham Park. There were some groups up there that are still moving around. So yeah, the Albanians are tough and we know a certain Albanian in the business now, don't we, guys? There's an Albanian out there doing some stuff.
Yeah, you mean the one that says he's Italian? He went several years claiming he was an Italian, and then finally one of the guys who was killed in prison, he was a stand-up guy. That's one of the things I found fascinating. There were these two guys, Burke and O'Connell, was it? And they were offered to get their freedom by testifying against John Jr., and they absolutely refused to. And they said Johnny A-Light was lying. And I just find that.
I think one thing about John A-Light that he'll never talk about is that he was not believable at all. He was a terrible witness. Yes. Anybody that saw the trial will tell you that. He was not believable. He was a junkie. It's true. He was not a believable witness. It's just that simple. He was a lot like, and Kane, you mentioned the Uva case.
Yeah.
There was a situation involving Curtis Sliwa. Do you know Curtis Sliwa?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Curtis Sliwa was a terrible witness as well against John Gotti Jr. He was not believable. Nobody believed him. Elite wasn't a good witness. It's that simple.
I can tell you a quick story about Curtis Sliwa. I was on his show right after I got locked up. Vince McMahon had my best friend lock me up. And then when I got out, I went on the Curtis Sliwa radio show. And while I was there talking about the pedophiles that were working at the WWE, Jerry McDivitt, the lawyer for that company, sent back then a fax, and it said Lee Cole. He started insulting me, and it said to Curtis Sliwa, Lee Cole has to come off your show right now. And I remember Curtis Sliwa reading it and telling Jerry McDivitt to go to hell, and I'll have whoever I want on my show. I mean, that's one of the. Or another time with Curtis Sliwa, my brother was homeless, and he let my brother sleep in the clubhouse down on 43rd Street. And these are the little things that I do remember positive about Curtis Sliwa.
Yeah, Curtis is actually running for mayor of New York. He's the one Republican candidate. So he'll take
I don't
on,
see too many big crowds around him. I don't think he's going to have a chance.
Well, he's in a city that will never vote for a Republican. So I don't know what he's doing, but you got to give him some honor for doing that. But look, he's a nice guy for sure. But from a witness standpoint, he was a terrible witness.
I didn't even realize that he was a witness against.
He testified in the trial. Yeah. There's actually a really interesting news clip if you ever want to look it up on YouTube. Curtis once went on at MSNBC. This was back in the 2000s, and he was just destroyed by Jeffrey Lichtman, who was Gotti's lawyer, and they just went back and forth on the news. It was really funny, but he was a bad witness. He was not believable.
And yes, he did start the Guardian Angels. I mean, that whole situation. In life you do things. Sometimes you get lucky, and other times you don't. He got kind of lucky with that whole group, but he got beat up a lot back. I remember back in the 80s, those guys used to get brutalized on a subway by groups of people. But they.
Yeah, I also wanted to quickly tell your audience. I've seen occasionally in your chat. I know a certain individual that has a YouTube channel keeps saying that Frank Locascio died. Frank Locascio is not dead. Frank Locascio is still alive. He's very old, but he's not dead. He's still up at FMC Devon. He's alive. Frank Locascio is not dead.
So what do you think about that's a story where Sammy said that Locascio and him talked about killing John Gotti, but yet when Locascio was basically sentenced by the judge, he tells the judge that John Gotti was the realest man that he ever knew. Was that another Sammy Gravano BS story?
Do I think that? No, I don't think Frank and him talked about that. No, I don't think that ever happened. Listen, you really got to – it's so tough because and I think we're smart enough to probably understand some of it's not factual. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that believe a lot of that stuff. Yeah. I mean, they'll believe if Sammy told them the sky was red, they'd believe it. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
I remember when I was talking about the Alan Kaiser murder, and people were saying in my chat room, Sammy said that's not the way it went. It went this way. And I'm thinking to myself, okay. And it's kind of scary.
So, Jeff, you look like a young guy.
32.
32. Okay. Do you think 20 years from now, if you're still covering this, that you'll be covering stuff that's going on present day, like what's going on now?
Yeah, I don't think the mob will ever go away. Definitely not.
I mean, you can't cover you don't cover anything that's going on now, right?
Well, I think the thing is,
right?
I think there's just not a lot going on. That's the problem. The mob has really went underground, particularly in New York. And look, a lot of families are just really small at this point. Years ago, Kansas City and Dallas and all these different places had connections and had families and had people. But, there's just really a small swath now. Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, a couple other places. But, hey, if there's news, we'll talk about it. But you look at the news nowadays, you're talking about, there was a story a couple of weeks ago. A Lucchese associate was hired by a Real Housewives of New Jersey ex-husband to beat up her new boyfriend. That's the kind of news we're dealing with now. So there's not a ton to really jump into, but again, do I think we'll be talking about for 20 years? Yeah. A lot of people are dying though. A lot of these old timers are going away.
Yeah. And I think with like you said, with the cameras and everything, nothing's going to be the same. People have to go on the internet now to learn how to do that kind of stuff.
When Lee, you look at a lot of the big money makers for the mob. Bookmaking is one of the biggest things the mob made money on, gambling, right? Every day there's a new state legalizing sports betting. Now, the good thing that the mob and illegal bookmakers can say is, we can give you credit, which if you go to the MGM Grand, they're not going to give you credit for anything. They're going to tell you to pound sand, bring money back, and you can bet. People will let you bet on credit with these illegal bookmakers. So there's a small piece of the pie there. I think a lot of mob guys are getting into legitimate businesses now. If you know anything about Frank Cali, who was killed a couple of years ago, he was in a lot of legitimate businesses, and that's what they're doing now. And they're kind of putting it all together and consolidating it and doing legal and illegal things.
I did a show on Frank Cali's murder, and I did a so-so job because I only knew so much, and I tried to do the best I can. But that guy that murdered him, this whole thing is very strange.
So Anthony Camello, I think a lot of people thought it was a mob war that was ensuing in New York City, but it wasn't true. It was just it was a deranged kid that, obviously got a little too deep into this QAnon stuff, and he believed that Frank Cali was part of the deep state. And he came out and said that. He believed he was an agent here to kill the president. He believed that. And he went and murked Frank Cali in front of his house, which is a wild thing to do, but he'll be in a loony bin eating green jello the rest of his life.
What's the story about him messing with the niece? Was that accurate?
I don't know I have not had anyone corroborate that. I think it was initially, I think it was something that people used and it seemed believable. The kid's young, decent looking kid. Maybe he ran around in certain circles, but from what I understand, it was just him being a complete lunatic. And I'll tell you this, the FBI and the Bureau of Prisons has a lot of explaining to do when it comes to Whitey Bulger. They still haven't explained themselves on that one. They put Whitey Bulger into the ground. It's that simple. Look at Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of that stuff. The Bureau of Prisons is responsible for a lot of that stuff. If they ever release Camello into general population, he'll be killed in 6 hours. And he never will be. He'll be in a loony bin his entire life. He's messed up in the head.
They put Jeffrey Dahmer in an area with a guy that hated them, and they knew it. I mean,
yep.
I mean, who's more corrupt?
I mean, Whitey Bulger is probably the most deliberate Bureau of Prisons fuck up in the history of the Bureau of Prisons. I mean, I don't understand whatsoever what they were thinking about putting a guy in his 80s with major health problems into one of the most lethal prisons in the federal system. I mean, they call that place Misery Mountain for a reason. Freddie Gies is a lunatic. What are they thinking doing that?
What do you know about Freddie Gies?
Freddie Gies was a hitman for up in Springfield. He was part of the Genovese family up in the faction up in Springfield. Was involved with Big Al Bruno up there. Killed some people for the Genoveses. He's a tough dude, Freddie Gies. And from what I've heard, Freddie Gies is out of control right now because the FBI still has him under solitary. And he's been in solitary for 3 years. And his lawyers are going to the BOP and saying, charge us or let us out of solitary. This is illegal. You can't keep me under these conditions. If you're going to charge me, charge me. And his beef is, you're not charging me. What are you going to do here? And then they have him in solitary for 3 years in a row. But Freddie Gies is a bad dude. Didn't like rats. Didn't like people that beat on women. And that was what Whitey was. Whitey was killed in like 12 hours. He wasn't going to last more than 12 hours.
Do you think that they knew exactly what they were doing?
Do I think they knew what they're doing? Yeah, I think they were allowed to do what they did. I think their cell doors were opened and they walked in and did what they wanted to do. I think it was a setup job. They wanted Whitey Bulger dead. I think he knew too much. Do I think could he really tell anyone anything? Probably not. But there are certain people that the feds don't want talking, like Marilyn Monroe and Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot. Listen, a lot of those people know too much. Do I think Whitey Bulger was just targeted because Freddie Gies didn't like him? I guess it's possible. It's plausible to believe. Do I think Freddie Gies will live like a king the rest of his time in federal prison? Yeah, he will. He's the king shit down in Hazleton now, for sure. People look up to him for his behavior there because people hated Whitey Bulger. It's that simple.
So what do you have coming up? What's the future of your channel? I mean, your podcast.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the next step is obviously taking it to another level. I think it's a compelling topic. And I think obviously you guys have shown that you could build an audience pretty quick talking about pretty much anything involving the mob. I think the goal is to interview people, to turn it into an organized crime show about everything organized crime, whether it's movies, whether it's mobsters. I have dreams to go into federal prisons and interview Tommy Patera. I want him to tell his story to me. What do you have to lose? Tell me your story. I don't look at this as investigative, but I look at it as something that is not something that people are really doing. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think I know a lot. I think I have a compelling way to speak. And the goal is to get it to a bigger place that can help me do that.
And what did you think of that letter that he wrote? And he was kind of mocking Johnny A-Light in it.
Well, do you want me to be really honest?
Yes.
I don't
want anything else. And
I don't believe he wrote the letter. I think it's made up. I don't think Tommy Patera gives two shits about John Elite. Why would he care about John Elite? He didn't know John Elite. Is he upset that the guy's making money? Maybe. I know there's a lot of people that are upset about rats making money. I would be if I were in that life. I'm scraping to get by some of these guys, and you see these cats on the internet making 30, 40, 50 grand a month doing this stuff. It's probably got to get to him. Do I think Tommy Patera even knows that he's who he is? How would he know? How would Tommy know anything about John A-Light? I don't. Now, again, I don't know.
Well, according to Johnny A-Light, they're best buds. They hung out, had beers and everything. So,
wow. Well, it's funny, Kane. I don't know, Lee, if you know this guy. I think Kane, you probably do. Have you guys ever seen that guy Johnny Russo? Do you know him?
Johnny Russo.
Have you ever seen him on Vlad TV or any of these?
Hootie?
No, this guy Gianni. He's an old guy. He was
from Godfather.
Yeah, he was Carlo in The Godfather.
Yeah.
So this guy, he'll tell you any story in the history of the world. He was a part of it. He was kidnapped by Pablo Escobar. He fucked Marilyn Monroe. He did all this shit. He's the king liar, but John's starting to get into some of his territory with some of his tales that he tells. But I do want to say, and I really want to be factual here. I mean this. If you don't think John A-Light did things, you do not know what you're talking about. It's that simple. And I know, Lee, John's not a good dude, but John A-Light knew people.
I always said that. I always said there's no doubt. But the one thing that I always said too is when he talks about these murders that he did with Junior,
I don't.
Junior wouldn't smack him and tell him get out of here.
Yeah,
he would have left another way.
That's some of the things I do not believe that John says. Now, was he at the Ravenite? Yes, he was. And if you don't think he was, you don't know what you're talking about. He knew a lot of people there. He was kind of a up-and-comer, I think you could say. Now,
watch what you say, because he'll be playing his tape tomorrow with you saying that.
That's fine. I listen, this is the difference between me and you, Lee. You have, and no one will say anything different. I don't have any agendas. I just do this and talk about things, right? I'm not in the game of talking about like, I don't do that. I just want to talk. Look, John's not, consequential to the mob's history. He just isn't.
Right.
He can pretend he was, but he wasn't. He thinks he's Sammy Guevara, but he wasn't. He just wasn't. So
and I think the biggest mistake he made was the other day when he went after Sammy. And he just started blasting people. You're like, it was a bad move. I'm like, who the hell's telling this guy to do this? Is he thinking about this himself? But I also have a problem too when a guy goes on the radio. I mean, does his show with his son sitting there saying that he's a hitman?
Yeah, it was definitely odd. I didn't understand that much either. But I think the problem for some of these guys, and I think Michael Franzese is dealing with it. If you look at Michael's channel, I mean, he's struggling with listeners all of a sudden because I think he's running out of things to talk about. The problem Michael has is he doesn't want to talk about certain things, and it holds him back. You can only tell the gas tax scheme one too many times. You can only review so many mob movies, and I think some of these guys are just running out of stories, and they just start talking about the same shit or stuff that didn't happen.
And Michael's not being totally honest about what he did, and with the snitching. And, I read up on this. There was a couple people, not just one person involved. I believe there was
listen, Michael did not create that scheme. And I don't think he'll admit that he did. It was created by a guy, Merit Balagula. He was a Russian. He had a ton of gas stations. And in fact, Anthony Casso was involved with it. Michael tried to muscle in. Christy Ticfuneri, who ran Queso at the time, said, listen, we're going to let everyone make money off this. There's no reason to start a war over this. The mob made money hand over fist. And Michael was the liaison for the Colombos, and he took a nice envelope to Carmine Persco, and he made a lot of money. But did he create it? No, he did not. And he knows he didn't.
Okay, we're at 119 now. We'll probably go 11 more minutes. Is that okay with you, Jeff?
We could. Hey, you want to go 3 more hours? I can do that. I don't care.
Okay, back to that letter. You said the Tommy Patera letter wasn't real.
I don't believe it was real. No, I didn't.
No, I mean the Mob Talk Radio. Jeff Carnarsi, he said that he wrote that letter.
I mean, I can say I wrote Michael Jordan and he responded to me too. I don't know Jeff that well. I've talked to him occasionally. I don't know him too well. I think he has an agenda. And if you don't think he does, I think you're nuts. Does he do a show that's informative? Yeah. I like Jeff's show. He's done it a long time. Produce the letter then. Show it. Let's see it. Let me see the BOP thing on the letter, show the letter then. What are you hiding it for? Put it out.
I've been listening to him for 5 years. I've never seen him come up with some bullshit.
So I ask you, Kane.
Yes.
Show the letter then to him. Let's see it.
Yeah.
Put the letter out there. You wanted to. Why didn't he talk about it? Why hasn't he brought it up?
Yes, he's talked about it several
times. Bring the
times.
letter out then. I don't know. You listen. I could be wrong. I guess I don't know why Jeff. Why would he write Tommy? Like, why did he do that? Why would Tommy even care about John A. Light?
Because
I could be wrong, but
maybe he write. It's easy to write people that are in prison.
Sure
I could write like. Hopefully they write back, but it's easy to write people in prison.
Yeah, this is good stuff because I can see it now. Someone's going to be steaming, and I'm just going to sit back.
No, but I had to address it. I don't give.
Listen,
listen. This Jeff guy gets a lot of fucking heat.
I
really like the guy's show. I really like the guy.
I have absolutely no beef with Jeff. All I said is let's see the letter. Why not put it out there? Let me see the BOP thing. We know his address. It's not like he's hiding somewhere. Patera, we know where he is.
It's something like when people get texts and they show a text, but they don't show the top of the text that it actually came from that person. Hey, maybe
why would Tommy Patera give a fuck about John A. Light? I guess is my question.
Well, he said in the letter he doesn't give a fuck about it.
How did it even come up? Like, did someone ask him? Like, did you know? I don't think they knew each other, as far as I know. But
I don't know.
It's interesting, fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
Sure.
So tomorrow, if he produces the letter, then he produces it, right?
Yeah,
and that's it. Or we can all be getting yelled at tomorrow for even bringing this up. So, but when you have a channel, if you want to be, I look at it this way. I get a lot of dislikes with the arrows. I used to say I want 90 to 100 likes and 2 people disliking. I always get 25 to 30 dislikes. And I recently found out that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing when people disagree with you.
Yeah, I think you have to have, because generally, and I'm sure you guys will agree here, Howard Stern said this many years ago. The people that hate me listen to me more than the people that like me. So they're always going to listen, So, and I've learned that through the years of sports betting and stuff that I do. So I don't.
I'm telling you, Lee Cole he got people doing voodoo spells on him. I don't know if you watched the show earlier.
There's some bad people out there.
I showed it before this afternoon. This guy did a voodoo spell on me and was saying Lee Cole holding a voodoo doll, sticking a pin. And he filmed it and I showed it.
Saying he's gonna have a tummy ache.
I'm gonna have a tummy ache.
Lee Cole.
Yeah.
They really hate Lee Cole. Lee Cole speaks the truth.
He's doing something. Lee Cole's doing something.
Wait, you know what I was worried about? Coming on this show, they're gonna start coming after me as well. Because I came on Lee's show.
It takes a while. It took them about a week for them to come after.
And to be fair, I consider this Kane Shade show too, because since he's been on the show with me, he's given me that. It's hard to do a show by yourself.
You guys have a good chemistry. Yeah. He kind of picks you up.
I needed a Mexican from a bodega.
Well, I'm a Cuban.
I heard.
Jeff. Yeah.
I heard you. I heard you were called. You look like you work at a bodega. That's what someone said. I saw.
Yes. It was.
We hear so much racist stuff that people say, and they don't even realize they're saying racist stuff. I'm like, did you just say that? You know.
I mean, but this is a guy that isn't Gene Native American. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think he's Italian, is he?
Yeah, I think part of his family's from a reservation.
Yeah, there's pictures. There's pictures of him in the reservation.
You know, I tried to find something good in him, but when I found out that he was terrorizing the young kids in his neighborhood after he put all those guys away in jail, I have a really hard time feeling sorry for him at all, to be honest with you. And
yeah, I mean, look, like I said on Gene, did Gene do things? Yeah, he did. He messed around with some bad guys. Ronnie G. Alonzo is one of them. But do I think he talks himself up a little bit? Yeah, I do. But he's entertaining, and that's something that people like. And I think he's way more interesting than that like god-awful John Panisi or some of these other guys. At least Sammy and Gene and some of these guys are like they're interesting. At least they're entertaining, I guess.
And what's your opinion on Hootie?
You know, I don't. And I mean this with the utmost respect. I never heard of Hootie until a month or two ago. I haven't found much on him. I don't know much about him. I saw he was on Vlad TV. That's when I first found him. Vlad interviews people that are pretty much with it. I didn't know who he was personally, but that doesn't mean he wasn't around. But yeah, I never heard of him.
I'm digging into that. I'm finding out some interesting things about that. About who
you know what, you know what I'm noticing now. The more popular this show becomes, I get emails from people that I'm sure you do too. I mean, stuff shows up and it's like, wow, I can't believe this person had this, or this. Yeah. So, you know, these guys out there, you know, they're digging up my past. I mean,
yeah, they definitely will. I mean, I think you just got to take it and don't worry about it. I try not to worry about it. One of your commenters is talking about, is calling women names and lying about kids being drug addicts entertaining. No, not at all. I didn't mean that. I think some of his delivery is entertaining occasionally, but no, some of his content is vile, which I've said. Lee asked me a question. I think he was at some point legitimate. Is he bullshitting about most of his stuff? Yes. And calling people names and women names is vile. And he is vile. And he knows.
And one thing you have to understand in this line of business, I'm going to say stuff. We're all going to say something that someone else doesn't like. Now, if we stood here and said something that everybody likes, there's something wrong with the show. Nobody's going to agree. I mean, we can't pretend
I know that there are certain people that they might hear what I say. Again, I don't have an agenda. Okay, none. I talk about what I know as fact, and he is occasionally entertaining with his laugh. Occasionally, like some of his stuff's funny. He's not a complete drab, but the shit he says, it's vile for sure.
Yes, without a doubt. And okay, what's this? Christopher DeFeo. My letters are been friends with Tommy Patera for 40 years. I don't know who that is. Christopher DeFeo.
Yeah, I believe you could just write Tommy Patera and he could write you back.
You can definitely write him, sure.
And I believe he responds. I mean, he does the paintings. He sells paintings and stuff. So
okay, so say he's getting out. Would you invite him to stay in your living room?
Hell no.
Tommy Patera? Well, he's been in prison a long time. Yeah, he's not going to get out, so I don't think we got to worry about that.
Okay, Hootie is full of shit. I have an indictment. He is lying about 98% of what it was. Drug dealer is answering phones in the office. He never ran big money poker, baccarat games ever. Never charged for it.
See, here's the thing with Hootie. He claims that he didn't, snitch or testify, but I've been looking into that. And he doesn't go by the name Anthony. It's Antonio. So you're not going to find anything if you're going to look at Anthony.
Also, one thing about Gene, he made a comment the other day about Angel Gotti. Really vile. I mean, I think he needs to stop involving people's families. They got nothing to do with anything, right? He's just nonsense. He shouldn't be doing that.
Sheldon, as I said before, Angel Gotti has a sick cat. It's a very close family cat. It's an animal. And when you have a show, these are the chances you take. So, I apologize, but it was legit and it was set up to be, she was set up originally to be on. So,
yeah, Chris, by the way, Chris, no one said we knew Tommy. We were asked questions about Patera and we answered them, Chris. Settle down, all right?
Well, the comment section going crazy, huh?
This guy's like, how do we know you're friends with him, Chris? We don't know who you are. How do we know you're friends with him? We ask questions and we answer them.
Doing fucks with Tommy Karate. And listen, any place you go, it don't matter who you are, somebody will fuck with you. That's a myth. I'm sure he's a badass guy. He knows martial arts, but he's up there in age now. How old is he now?
Tom Patera's in his 60s, I believe. I don't know.
It has to be older, no? Doesn't he have to be older?
Might be early 70s, maybe. I can look it up. I'll let you know in a second.
Okay, so, then he says, they said
66.
He was in the witness protection. Booty denies this. Booty. Okay.
Hootie.
Well, there's certain guys that are kind of disliked and they get hit really hard. Like, you know what? I went on to Bold Italians. And one thing I want to say real quickly about the Bold Sicilian. He has a great station, and if he comes up with information, it's usually pretty accurate. So, there was a little issue there, but I'll be the first person to say that that's the guy. I like everything he's doing with his show. And he's always been very fair to me. Today I went to his show and and they're purposely doing this, every other word was leak hole in his chat
in the
box.
comment section.
It was ridiculous. Leak hole. And they're purposely doing this because they're trolls. They want to get this guy pissed off at me because, and then I'm talking to him about having someone monitor his chat room. It's important to monitor your chat room, especially when you have 200-300 people coming in at a time.
Yeah.
K-Mac is he's a regular on this show. He asks his tough questions. Does anyone have audio of Patera? Because I want to hear his Mickey Mouse voice.
You won't hear it. There is none.
There is none. Does he really have a Mickey Mouse voice?
From what I understand, he has a high-pitched voice. But there are like Al Capone. I've never heard him speak. Patera, I never heard him speak. There are a few guys, but yeah, I've never heard Patera, and I don't think we ever will.
The guy that was on tape with John Gotti, his voice is like about as different as you can get.
Who are you talking about?
The gentleman that is still in jail.
Oh, Frank Lucas.
Oh, Frankie Loke.
Yeah. His voice is much.
Yeah, they were interesting. That was an interesting family. Him and his son. I mean, his son was a big moneymaker. Salvatore Lucas. He's a big moneymaker.
Now they're going to be doing a movie about John Gotti, a part 2, and it's going to be the time he was in jail, and it's basically going to be, what do you think about something like that, where they're going to basically tell about the last part of his life?
Well, I've said before, and I've gotten shit for this. I think the original Gotti film is the best mob movie ever made, in my opinion. I think it's more factual than anything. The acting done it was incredible.
Phenomenal.
Anthony Quinn was terrific as Della Croce.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just every act. Asante literally lived the God. I mean, and I think the family will tell you that he was terrific. I'm fascinated by this new film, what it's going to be, because my thought is I think it almost will have some flashbacks, kind of like The Godfather 2 when Vito goes back to Sicily. I get a feeling that there are some flashbacks to John's early life because in the press release, guys, there was an actor listed involved in this project. The actor that played Frankie DeCicco is said to be involved in this film. That would lend me to believe, because Frank DeCicco was dead by the time Gotti went to prison. So it led me to believe that there is some flashbacks. I think it'll go hand in hand maybe with Junior's life. I don't know. But I had to think, like, for 2 hours, how do you have a sequel to what we saw? Because the sequel was John at the end of the film was standing in the prison cell. There was nothing after that, right? So I think there's got to be some sort of prequel to it. But we'll see. I'm glad that Asante's involved. Dominic Chianese seems like he's 150 years old. The junior soprano.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That guy never ages. It seems like. But the director will be important. They have to get the right director because Angel will tell you herself that Kevin Connolly fucked up that Travolta film badly. That was a horrific movie. So they need to get the right director for them.
And as far as the flashbacks, if they do the flashbacks, do you think it goes way to Gotti, like as a teenager when he was with what crew did he run with? The Rock, or what was it?
Fulton Rockaway Boys.
The Rockaway Boys. You think it shows that? You think they go way, way, way back?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love if they did, Kane. I would love to see that. A lot of people don't know that John, when he was a kid, they robbed a cement mixer from a construction site. John always walked with a kind of swag to him. The mixer dropped on his foot, and he had a foot problem his entire life. His family will tell you that. I would love to see his life growing up, with Willie Boy Johnson and Gene, Angie Ruggiero, and those guys. I think it was really well casted. I hope a lot of those people are in this film, whether it's Pastor, who played Ruggiero, or whoever. I'll be interested to see how far they go back. We'll see.
Willie Boy Johnson is a perfect example of how evil our government can be.
Yeah, Diane Jackalone really fucked that one up.
I mean, I don't even know how she could look at herself.
Well, and we talk about Patera. Patera was known to be the shooter. Now, he was acquitted of that case. Weirdly enough, it was one of the only murders he was actually acquitted of. He got convicted of 6 other murders, but according to people, he was the shooter, him and another guy, Vinny Kojak. But yeah, Willie Boy Johnson was shot 19 times. And yes, Jack.
From what I understand, they shot him 19 times because they were scared of him.
Yeah,
he was a tough dude for sure.
Yeah.
Someone in the comment section saying he didn't rob that cement truck.
Well, again, if history is wrong, it's wrong, but that's what I understand. But listen, again, that person could be right. I don't know. But so how did he get the foot injury? I mean, it's common knowledge he did. It was fact. And a lot of people have talked about that. But maybe you're right. I don't know.
Now, Brandon Bell, he's kind of a historian when it comes to mob stuff. And so I like to read his stuff because him and I argue quite a bit. Used to have Patera's short audio on YouTube. Sounds kind of like Al Capone, but a higher pitch, very unique if they got him on wire. Who it was, I'll say, that have searched. Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard Capone's voice. From what I understand, there was no audio of it, but maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Angel said he was 12 years old when he got that injury.
Yeah, and I think that's how he got it. Cement mixer fell on his foot and crushed his toes.
Okay, let's see. Knucklehead Barry start. Oh, let me ask you a question, Larry Mazda.
Yeah,
you hear so much good stuff, bad stuff on Larry Mazda. What is your opinion on Larry Mazda?
I think Larry was definitely a tough dude. I mean, he was Greg Scarpa's guy. I mean, he did a lot of bad things with Gregory Scarpa. I think he got Greg Scarpa's respect from being a young, 18, 19-year-old kid. The story about the wife, Linda, very true. They had a conversation. I think Larry Mazda is very believable. I've always found him to be, he was a rat, sure, but he's a nice guy. He always seems kind. I've talked to him on occasion. I know he's wrote a book, pretty interesting book. I don't have any. He seems to be believable to me.
Yep.
If you get Greg Scarpa's respect, I think I probably would say you're pretty.
Well, that's the thing I hear about him. I hear that he is. I'm going to ask you another name, and you probably may not even know him, but we brought him on a show, and he took the show over, and he ate on the show. It was hard to deal with him. Gunnar Lindblom.
You really put me on the spot with these, Lee.
Okay.
Well, look. Listen, I think ultimately I need to make this clear. I'm not in the mafia. Okay, I don't know per se. Okay, from what I know, from the people that I know, from the things that I've looked into, was he related to Jack Tocco in some way? Maybe. Do I believe what he says? Not particularly. But again, anyone can tell stories, and not a lot of people are going to call them out for it. Would I want to talk to him? Not really. I don't really have much to say to him. Now, the Detroit Partnership, a powerful organization, very much had no one ever cooperate with law enforcement, made a ton of money, really powerful. So I love Detroit. I think they're super interesting, but as far as I know, I don't believe much he says. No.
Now, isn't that guy White Boy Rick out of jail now?
White Boy Rick is out of jail. Yes, he actually just sued the FBI for $100 million.
I think that is one of the most injustice things I've ever heard of.
Big miscarriage of justice. Surely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Rick did 30 years. I mean, keep in mind, Nate Kraft, who was a hitman in Detroit, he killed like 20 people. He was a hitman for the Curry organization and other groups. He didn't even do 30 years, and he was a murderer. Johnny Curry was a drug trafficker and only did 20 years. Rick got a raw deal. Anybody that knows him will tell you that. And Rick's just trying to live his life now, man. You know, he's got out. He's got a story to tell. And I hope he wins the lawsuit. I really do.
I like to see him on a podcast. I like to see him on a podcast.
I think it's in the works from what I understand. I'm sure he'll be interviewed by somebody. But yeah, I think Rick is a sad cautionary tale of what the FBI will do to young people.
To me, the most treacherous human I've ever, Kwame Kirkpatrick.
Oh yeah, a total piece of shit. Yeah.
What an evil, despicable human being. And he was behind that man being put in jail for those years.
Well, you look at Detroit in the 80s, Gil Hill, all those guys, all these people that were just terrible people. You know, the mayor of Detroit at that time, just the government is some of the worst criminals out of all of it. You know, when you really look back, and I said to you, when we look at history in America, the mob and criminal organizations really ran this country for a long period of time. But the biggest criminal organization after all of it is the federal government.
Look at the innocent people that just happened to be at the Capitol today. That stuff was going down in jail without bail.
Well, Lee, let's call a spade a spade. Let's stop. Come on, Lee. Let's be real. They ran in that Capitol.
No, I'm not talking about the people that went inside. I'm talking about the people that they just was outside. People
that's
and they're in jail. No, I'm not talking about any.
You're not talking about the people that were sitting on desks and shit.
That set back everything 100 years.
You're just talking about the revelers outside.
Yes, because basically they just started taking everybody down.
It's sad, man, on all fronts. Both sides can be real lunatics. But yeah, the White Boy Rick story is sad, man. It really is. Louis M. Can I talk about that Louis M. comment right there?
Yeah. Sure. What does he say?
That might be the stupidest thing one of these people have ever said on the internet.
What did he say? What did he say?
Ali Shades Malangone, for anyone that doesn't know, was one of the better earners over the last 25 years in the mob. He literally ran the garbage business in New York. He controlled it. He made a ton of money. He was very respected. For Gene Barella to say he stole or beat Ali Shades up or robbed him, total nonsense. It never happened.
There's a lot of things that Gene Barella said that never happened. Especially when you're going on there, he's beating everybody up and stuff. So this guy that you're talking about, that quote that he just made, who exactly was he besides an earner?
Ali Shades was a guy that was in the Genovese crime family. He was a capo, long-time guy, came up, was in control of the Fulton fish market for a long time, was really in control of a lot of big-time rackets, was a true blue Cosa Nostra guy, did time, was a tough guy, and was close. A lot of people don't realize the Genovese family was the Ivy League of the mob. They were the ones that made the most money. They had, to me, I think they're the most interesting family, the Genoveses, whether it was Chin Gigante or Tony Salerno, Matty Ianello, the horse. He controlled the Times Square and the prostitution and vice in the 70s. You've got someone like Malangone. I mean, these are guys that made a ton of money. He got his name through, he always wore sunglasses. They called him Ali Shades. But, he was very respected. Chin Gigante respected him. Everybody respected him. To think that someone like him would beat him up or something. It's just not true. In fact, I think when Gene in his heyday, Ali Shades was in prison. So I don't, not really sure what he's talking about.
And this thing,
I'm sorry, go.
And this thing about Gene Borello terrorizing Howard Beach and all this, everyone's locked up at the time that he's breaking into homes and all this other bullshit. Like,
If
there's
he broke into
no
Ali
one
Shades-
was around when he was. This is what 2015, 16. Like, come on.
Well, even in the
take
90s,
credit for that, like,
or
you know.
whatever. Yeah, it's even in the 90s. If let's say it would have happened, like
He would have been gone if he would have did that.
yeah, you don't break into people like Ali Shades. You're not breaking into his house. What is he, nuts? Come on, Gene.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, he took advantage of those guys being locked up, and he preyed on a lot of those young kids, bullied them actually.
Yeah, I don't. There's a lot of things that he says I don't believe. Did he sell drugs? Did he beat people up for Ronnie G? Yeah, he did. That story he told about shitting in his pants, the guy that he beat up, that happened. I mean, a lot of people know that. They beat people up that owed loans and bookmaking debts. That's definitely true. But I don't think Gene did anything to Ali Shades.
There's absolutely no way Gene robbed Ali Shades. If he did, it's unlikely he'd be around to talk about it.
Now, unless there's another Ali Shades that we're not talking about, maybe there's a young Ali Shades out there. If we're talking about the Ali Shades that I know, no shot.
Okay, let's see.
Really good comments, man. A lot of these people are smart people.
Oh yes. Well, according to Gunnar Lindblom, the wrestling genre is broke and stupid, and that's why he doesn't need them. He actually said that on our show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He actually said that on our show that I don't need these people, and I was like shocked when he was saying that.
What did he say about the wrestling or the mob genre?
The mob genre.
Oh, you said wrestling. Yeah, mob
No,
genre.
Yeah, he said it about the mob. He said the mob people were. They didn't buy his product. They didn't buy his shirts. This dude's all about himself. The chin was Kyle Clancy from Secular Talk. I don't understand what he means there. Do you guys?
I do not. I don't know who that is.
Okay. That's when you're too smart, dude. You're smarter than you don't understand what you're writing. Christopher DeFeo, isn't every book about a mob guy hearsay?
No. I mean, a lot of it's researched and they read into trials and they literally spend time with some of these people. They know these people. No, I mean, some of it's bullshit. Like the Gotti's Rules book was bullshit. Total bullshit. But,
I hated the way that book was done because they basically knew if they put the Gotti name on the book that people would buy it thinking the Gottis wrote it.
They got me. That's how they got me like 5 years ago.
King,
that's why I bought it.
They had a guy that wrote the book, George Anastasia. He's a very accomplished writer. I mean, he's wrote a ton of great books.
He fucked up on that book, huh? Do you think it fucks up his credibility a little bit?
I think he got a little bit. George is older now. George has wrote a lot of great books, and he's definitely a guy that knows a ton about the mob. But I think he lost a step with that book. I didn't quite understand that one.
Okay, now we're going to have Gunnar stuff coming in. Gunnar has a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. Was Chin's brother, the priest, a made man?
Absolutely not. He was a priest. He actually ended up being a city councilman as well up in the Bronx. No, of course not. Now Chin's other brothers, like Mario, they were involved with the life, but no, the one brother, Lewis, was a priest.
And this guy says Gene has a big mouth and wouldn't last long around real mob guys. I kind of agree with that. I mean, but the problem is there's not that many. All the real mob guys are in jail. I mean, that's the problem. Because Mazda was always greased up for skull. God,
stop it, man.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, we're gonna. You know what? We've been on an hour and 48 minutes, and I really like to thank you for coming on. We're at 313 people. We've been over 300 for an hour.
Well, if you want to keep going, I'm available. If you don't, that's fine too.
Oh, we can keep going a little bit. Well, Kane Shade's got a certain bedtime. Matter of fact, his old lady was yelling on him the other day, saying, "Why are you spending so much time with this Lee guy?"
That is false. That didn't happen. Lee's a trip, man. He's a motherfucker.
Well, tell your listeners, get some last minute questions in. Maybe we'll do a couple more minutes.
All right.
If anyone has
Come on, guys,
anything-
let's get some questions. It's some really good questions.
Okay.
Hey, why don't you take over right here and ask some questions, Kane Shade?
Oh, DJ Tex says, who tells more lies, Johnny A. Light or Steven Seagal? You want to answer that or no? I'll go on to the next one.
Seagal, I think he means.
Yeah,
Seagal.
I'm gonna say the first name that tells more lies. Steven Seagal is just an actor.
Mafia news: someone threw one of his bats into A-Light spokes. Wait, I'll tell you what. When they start going off in A-Light, we get some of the funniest stuff in there.
You don't want a nice Louisville Slugger with his name on it?
No.
Gunner has a pic of Lee, Unk, and Jeff on his wall, stabbing it right now.
I hope he doesn't. Listen, I'm not saying. Listen, I'd love to talk to Gunner if he wants to talk, and we can have real conversations. I have no issue with him. I don't have any issues with any of these guys. I'd love to speak to any of them. If any of them want to speak to me, if you want to speak to me, make sure you bring the right stories because you're not going to get called out and played by me. It's not going to happen.
But you know what? Out of everybody I've interviewed, we've interviewed Gunner. By far, Jimmy was the most popular. I mean, I'm at 20,000 with that video, 22,000.
If you want me to rank the people that are most likable in that group, I'll tell you. The people that I find likable, again, they are rats. They've done bad things. I find Jimmy to be very interesting. I've said that before. I think Larry's interesting. I think his interview he did with Vlad TV was terrific. I urge you to check it out if you haven't. Very good. Sammy occasionally can be interesting, but they all have some interesting points to them. But those guys I mentioned, I thought were most interesting.
Once I heard that penis pump story, I just cannot turn on it.
Yeah, it was a rough one. Yeah. It was a rough one.
I mean, he told me about it. I didn't believe him. I went and looked for it. I'm sorry that I went to look at a guy talking about penis pumps.
Well, Lee, I'll tell you this. Paul did actually have that done. That
I knew.
Paul had diabetes. And by the way, our show coming out tomorrow is about Paul Castellano. So if you want to hear it, check it out. But yeah, he definitely had one, but I don't think Sammy asked him to see it and stuff, which is what Sammy says. I don't think that happened.
Real quick, I see the Biggie and Michael Jordan.
Let me read this real quick. Lee, a little tip: try not to go low with childish comments. Okay.
Oh shit.
Thank you, Robert. I've never seen you on this show before, but I appreciate your compliment. Tell John I said hi. Okay.
No, I just wanted to compliment on his paintings with the Biggie Smalls and the Michael Jordan. Who did the paintings? He just bought it online?
Yeah, I got them online. A guy I know painted them, and he was selling all sorts of different ones. I'll tell you what, I do want to shout out Jeff Canarsie for a second. We talked a little about him earlier. Jeff, and I still think has them, and I would highly recommend them. Jeff has these canvas portraits, kind of like the ones back there of mobsters. I got one, Vincent Gigante, the chin. I have it in my bedroom. My bedroom's all mob stuff and terrific quality, really good stuff. So if you like Jeff, he sells them, I think, still. I would check them out. They're awesome. Very cheap as well. I think they're like $50. Cheap stuff.
Okay, let's see. Cecil says, Gunner said today he's getting away from YouTube for a while.
No shit.
Well, the other day he had a live show and he had 45 people watching. Maybe that's why. Because he insulted the hell out of me behind my back to people. Okay. And he called me a little station, and it's like, they all call me a little station. And
what does that even mean?
Yeah, like Gene said, he has like 20 people, and little channel. Channel, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
they make fun of me because I say
they make fun of him because he says instead of YouTube channel, Lee says YouTube station.
Yeah, it's not a radio station, Lee.
I like station. Justin King, okay, we don't. Okay, come on, what's the Gunner? Gunner looks gay with his goatee, trying to look like Lee. Okay. That stuff don't bother me because it's like, okay, you just wasted a couple seconds of your life thinking about me. Sell Lee Cole inscribed bats with John Elite's wisdom tooth embedded in it. Let me put something straight. I'm going to just say one thing about John A. Light. It's not that I don't have nothing against him. What I have against him is the continuous lies that are obvious. And the only thing I find worse than that are the people that believe it. You know,
Man, some of these comments are funny.
It's crazy. Lee Cole, this little community he got going on here is
they're funny.
crazy.
Some of these people.
Yeah.
Gunner got outed for that wheelchair scam. Oh, I heard. Yes, there was some stuff. Actually, I wrote him a letter because he wrote me a letter and he was kind of making fun of me. And I asked him why he never talks about the person that he carjacked. And isn't it amazing how these guys don't talk about the lowest moments of their life? Yeah.
True.
Most of this Panisi stuff seems legit besides his story of him and John Santori going into the Gambino joint for a drink and punking Gene Gotti in front of the whole HB crew. Would never happen.
Jeff, what do you know about the Panisi? Do you know anything about him or?
Yeah, I don't know a whole hell of a lot about John Panisi. He's a pretty new-aged guy. I never heard of him. I know according to him, he's made, but I don't know much. I know he did an interview as well with Vlad TV. I saw recently he said that his grandmother sent him a message through death to cooperate. Just some real weird shit. But I don't know much about him. I didn't really know who he was until recently.
Okay, most of Gunner's followers have 2 teeth and chew tobacco. Okay, guys, stop with the Gunner stuff. I wish I never mentioned Gunner because you guys go off when I mention Gunner.
Yeah.
It's a Gunner thing. Okay, John Lightfax outed that loser years ago. I don't feel bad for people who still get taken by IRAT. I can understand that because there are a lot of people. I often wonder about this kid who let him take over his studio. I don't know if you heard that story.
Yeah, I don't know him too well. He seems like a nice kid.
He does.
I will say one thing about the Elite Facts page. The Ravenite stuff was not. John was around. Okay, he was around those guys. You see him on camera for hours on end. Okay, he wasn't just moving in and out. Is he someone that he says in his stories? No, but he was around. I don't think you can say he wasn't.
But Junior never says he wasn't around. Junior basically said, I told him to meet me. I used to tell him to meet me there because I didn't want him driving into Queens.
Yeah, that's fair. Sure.
And he comes out and says that. And Junior also says it was a period of time there that this guy was part of my life.
I think John lived in South Jersey at the time as well. So
yes,
that makes sense,
Yes. And I don't know if did you ever see the part where Junior holds up the stack of 302s that was done by John A. Light?
I don't believe I have, no.
The stack was like about maybe 6 inches thick.
Okay.
And because he basically got every one of these and he just said, this is who he snitched. This is how many people he went out on and snitched on.
I will say 60 Minutes did a very good piece on John Gotti Jr. maybe 10 years ago. Very good. They talked about his father. It was very well done. John was in it, actually. It's very good stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I will say to anybody, here's the excuse A-Light would say, well, he was a snitch too. They put him on trial 5 times. 5 times.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say besides that. That says everything. Jeff, how long was Jack Garcia undercover? Do you know?
Yeah. I think it was 3 to 5 years in that range. I've spoke with Jack a few times. Really nice guy. I'm attempting to try to get him on my show soon, and I hope I can because I know he has some really great stories about his time undercover. And I think he's a really likable guy. So I'm hoping we can get him on very soon. But I don't know the exact amount of time. I think it was in the 3-year range.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As this is a gentleman that disagrees with me a lot, but does he have Biggie Smalls on his wall? Gangster?
Yeah, he does.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Okay, then we'll say, Carl, I say that all the time, Lee. Okay. James Dean, he is good to watch. Okay, well, we're at the end here. We've gone 2 hours. We're at 300.
Yeah.
And once again, I'd like to thank everybody.
So once
Jeff,
again, Jeff, how do we find your show? What do you do?
Yeah,
You
so
go into
let
the
me try to
Google-
make this easy for everybody. If you enjoy what I'm doing, you enjoy what I'm talking about, I have a podcast. Just search it on iTunes. You can go to Google and find it through the podcast, Spotify, whatever. It's called The Sit Down, a Mafia history podcast. You can also catch me on Twitter at The Sit Down 7. Lee tweets it out. I put all my stuff up there. And come check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy the fact that we put out stuff that I think a lot of people don't know. We try to find some good information, and I think the show is going to go really well and continue to grow. So,
And if you look at the information underneath this video, you'll see all the addresses there. I
am working on getting it on YouTube. I was kind of just focusing on the numbers that I have on iTunes right now because I'm trying to get it to a bigger platform. That's kind of the goal. So, but yeah, it's coming. But check it out on iTunes or Google, wherever.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and
I love being here. Whenever you want to have me back, I'd love to be here.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'm going to tell. I went onto your channel, and I listened to those really wonderful.
Thank you.
I mean, they were really well done, and they were very exciting, kind of edge of the seat type of thing, and so please go check them out. I mean, they're really good. And it's
one other thing, and I want to thank you for that. One other thing we're going to do as well. The YouTube channel that I'm going to create, I'm going to put the shows on there, but we're also going to do kind of a short every week about a smaller mobster that people may not know of. We're going to tell stories that maybe people don't know about, and I think that's what people like as well.
So
Quick hitters.
So we can look forward to Johnny A-Light.
Yeah, we'll do. You know what, Lee? For you, we'll do a John A-Light story for sure.
I would love this. I'd love to see one.
We'll do a G. Morello story. We'll do a Jimmy story. We'll do all of them just for you.
Actually,
Lee.
I would like out of all of them, I would like Jimmy's.
You know, Lee, I got to tell you, Lee, and I'm going to ask you right now before I go. Let's say I take my show to a big platform, and I can get John on my show, and I can get you on my show. Would you do it?
Hell yeah.
You both come on, and we can hash it out.
I don't think he has enough guts, but John, if you have enough guts, I would love to do that. And I'll be respectful.
Now, that would be interesting.
And I won't be arguing with you. I'll be respectful and just say what I have to say. I would love that.
I got a kick out of when John was asked by Jimmy to get into the ring, and John said no. What was up with that? I thought he was a big hitter, you know.
Yeah, John, you know what it is? When you look at John and you look at Jimmy, you would think John would kill him because of the muscle. No, because Jimmy is a street fighter. That's just my opinion. Yeah. And I think that Jimmy would do a number on him. That's just, me being honest. And
well, thank you guys for having me. It was really enjoyable. Anytime you want to do it, let me know.
Okay, we appreciate it. I'll see you in the back room, my man, but thank you so much. Hey,
thank
people, thank everybody for being here. It was 2 hours of a fantastic show. And this Jeff, we're doing a show this Friday. It's an expert on the Johnny Depp, Amber Heard thing.
Yeah, I heard about that. I don't know much about that. I will say Johnny Depp was absolutely terrific in Donnie Brasco and Blow, two of the great movies ever made. I'm a big fan of his, so I'll have to check that out. I didn't know about that. And
I'm doing it because Johnny Depp is a great actor when it comes to certain characters, mafia characters, whatever. Oh, yeah. And I just want to talk about how this man he's destroyed. He's lost everything. And
I didn't know it was that serious.
He lost he was the pirate. They took that away from him. Wow. And that was his role. He made that character. He literally developed. It's like people said to him, "Is that pirate gay, drunk? What's the story on that pirate?" And Johnny goes, "You'll never know." So, I
never knew that stuff.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And his career is an amazing story. And it's a shame when you see but this is what I will tell you, men that are 56 years old. Don't try to date 20-year-old women. It just ain't going to work out.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody take care. And thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
All right.